On this episode of Industry Relations, Rob and I discuss the upcoming CoStar Super Bowl ad blitz and the KW settlement. Let's go. This is Industry Relations, a podcast that's at the intersection of real estate and technology from an insider's perspective, with Rob Hahn and Greg Robertson.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Industry Relations with Rob and Greg. This is your co-host, the Notorious Rob Hahn. As always, with me, the fabulous Greg Robertson.
Hello, Rob.
Hola. Welcome to Super Bowl weekend.
Yeah, well, I guess by the time this comes out, it'll be past. But we're recording Friday, so happy Friday before the Super Bowl. I'm having a little party over at my place, so
yeah. It's been a miserable week here in Vegas because traffic has been awful.
Oh yeah, you're in Vegas. That's right.
Highways are shut down. It's
the weather's been shit too. So
weather's been horrible, right? And I guess at least it's indoors, so that part's okay, I suppose. My understanding, I have no personal experience with this. Apparently, the entire globe's most talented strippers have descended on Las Vegas.
Oh, yes.
I don't know what it is about the NFL and that business that intersects, but apparently that's the case.
Oh, yeah. They've swarmed.
Yeah.
It's like the flying monkeys. They've released the flying monkeys there. Yeah.
I'm glad my city is having an economic surge.
Well, you got to put them all through college, right?
I don't want to be anywhere near like the stadium, the strip, or anything. So, we will be very glad when Sunday is over and done. Who do you have, by the way? Are you a fan? Do you care about either team?
Yeah, I mean, I got to go with San Francisco. I mean, because I'm a Chargers fan and I just hate, KC because they're in our division and always beat us. Although we got Harbaugh now, that's going to be a good thing. So I'll be, I used to live in San Francisco, so I'm going to go for the Niners, I think.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't care either way. I have zero feelings or opinions about either team. I've stopped watching sports ball years ago. That's what we were talking about in the pre-show, right? Like I used to be a total football fan. Like I love the NFL, love college football. COVID hit. I'm like, yeah, I'm done with all the sports ball. I'm gonna watch ballet instead because that's human athletics at its peak.
Yeah, no, you could talk a little bit about that. I have some news to announce though.
Let's do it. News. Breaking news.
I had the highest trafficked my highest traffic day on Vendor Alley this week.
Wow. Because?
Is that because? Okay, so I've been kind of like, we've been talking about this a long time of like, when is homes.com going to do this whole campaign? They do their apartments.com. It's been part of their strategy. And then on the Grammys, I saw an ad for homes.com with Dan Levy, which we heard about that he kind of teased. And I kind of written about that. So it's like kind of because, it was just heightened of mind.
Sure.
And then I saw 3 other videos that were kind of like these things that basically they're teasing 2/11/24, which is the date of the Super Bowl, right? So I wrote a blog post about that. Hey, it looks like, the monstrous ad campaign that homes.com has been promising is going to be the Super Bowl, right? Which of course that's Andy Florence all over the place, right?
Right.
So then it was sometime this week, maybe Monday, I saw another ad on the YouTube channel, right, of homes.com. And it was basically this kind of promo thing to say, here's all the advertising we're going to be doing for homes.com. And it was like all these logos and the Super Bowl and this and that and all the people that are going to be on there. And they were basically saying that they're going to spend about $1 billion, right? So so I took that video, I put it on my blog, and I put the headline was Zilterfin just peed in their pants, right?
Right.
Now, a little birdie told me that a certain CEO of a certain large company called CoStar might have shared that with a lot of people in his company. The only reason I kind of believe that is because are
we talking millions, hundreds of millions?
I don't share stats. Okay. So, but besides that in my RPR bunker video, I mean, that was the biggest the traffic.
It just occurs to me that if they're spending $1 billion on marketing homes.com, I happen to know of a very influential small podcast, that's also on YouTube, right? That
throw a couple
substantially cheaper than billion. I mean, just a fraction, tiny fraction of that budget,
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I think we're up and down on all of the portals, right? So I don't, who knows? That's our problem, is getting a steady vendor is like, we as much get them on the bus and throw them under the bus of everybody out there. So
hey man, it's all right. But a little bit more seriously, that's first of all, if that number is true, that's insane, right? That's incredible. Yeah. I mean, I can't think of any.
He calls it the largest real estate campaign in history.
It might be the largest campaign period. I'm actually trying to remember. Like, has there been any product, any service, right? Any website, anywhere, like in history?
No, I mean, you might be right. $1
billion in advertising?
Yeah.
Now, maybe it's $1 billion in total marketing spend, right?
Yeah. I don't know if acquisitions are part of that or what. Yeah.
Who knows, right? But it's huge.
Yeah.
But what that makes me think about is this because Andy is a boomer? Right. Here's what I mean. Like before, remember we were talking about the whole like NAR PR efforts and yada, yada. And I made the point, like, if you want to have like real impact now, you got to get on Joe Rogan.
Right.
You got to get on, whatever, the Young Turks or the YouTube channel. You got to get on those because that's where the young people are. Right. That's where. So I'm wondering, like, $1 billion, he could have bought the Joe Rogan show for that. Right? I mean, I don't remember what the Spotify deal was worth. He could have been like, how about this? How about we CoStar pay you $300 million a year, right? And we'll still let you stay on Spotify, but now we're like,
yeah, I've heard that podcasters
Joe Rogan show brought to you by CoStar or Homes.com.
I've heard the podcasters you can pay to be on Tim Ferriss, for instance.
Oh, really?
Right? There's different things. I think I read that somewhere. So maybe there's some, but again, I mean, I think this is like, I mean, there's so many logos on there. It might have been a podcast stuff, but it's got to be part of their strategy. But I mean, the stuff they're focusing on now obviously is like Super Bowl.
Sure.
Right. I mean, and that is a very boomer, old school. You want to launch a product. Everybody says, let's get an ad on the Super Bowl. Right. I mean,
right.
That's where the Macintosh was first introduced. Right.
I mean, but you think about like the Super Bowl ad slot, what that costs plus the cost of making that ad.
Yeah.
And it just makes me wonder, like, if you had just taken that budget, right, and then just done a sponsorship on, let's say, the top 100 podcasts.
Yeah.
And YouTube channels. I bet they could have gotten, like, for the next year, every single podcast host that you could possibly tune into would be like, this episode brought to you by Homes.com. And then they would read, and here's the thing, it's not a 30-second ad, right? Because it's new media.
Yeah.
They would have read like a 2-minute, like, I use Homes.com because I think blah, blah, blah. And, let me tell you about this and that and the other thing. It's one of those things that kind of makes me
I got, again, I didn't see like an Excel spreadsheet with a list of how they're doing it, but I mean, that's got to be part of the strategy. I know just from using my phone, like, I use anywhere I go to now, they've already been spending a ton of advertising on, social media and stuff. I mean, I see homes.com ads and apps and
of course
and websites and everything else. So that's definitely got to be part of their strategy.
Of course.
Going forward.
I mean,
right?
I assume that the CoStar Homes.com marketing team, they know what the hell they're doing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, you don't get to be in that position without having some track record of success. But this particular thing does make me wonder, is it because Andy's a boomer? It's like, you know what? I'm going to go show Ziltor Finn, as you put it, right? I'm going to show these people, like, this is how big boy rolls. Let me show you, like, we're going to do 4 Super Bowl ads and, whatever, spend $1 billion. Where if it was like a millennial, I think it would be like, I'm going to show these people, I'm going to spend $1 billion and literally own every YouTube channel, right?
Yeah.
Every TikTok, right? It's just a interesting, like,
Yeah. And just to be clear, I mean, the Ziltor Fin is actually something Andy said, Andy Floyd said. That's his, remember it used to be like, a Zilter, and then it was, he's added Redfin to that. So it's I remember
Zulia, remember when Trulia was independent?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like, the what was it? Benlow or whatever Benifer, right?
Right,
Everybody wants
right.
to give
Okay. So
names for celebrity
let's do a little
couples
bit
or
of
whatever.
predictions though. All right. So they're going to go spend $1 billion, right? How much of an impact do you think that this will have on homes.com traffic market share versus Zillow?
Let's talk about that. So there was a great article and it just, I think it was today, of an interview with him on RS Media, Andy Florence, talking about all this. So one of the things that jumped out to me was they've already kind of beaten Zillow on the apartments front.
Right.
So, Zillow used to be number one on that. And it said, I think in the article, it said it took them 5 years to overcome. And now apartments.com is the place to go. So using that as a benchmark, he already knows it's not an overnight type of thing. It's kind of a steady Eddie kind of stuff there. So I think this is going to make a big splash. I think this is going to be, one thing is that, if you're a real estate agent, I saw somebody on Twitter do this. If they're spending a ton of fucking money on this advertising, I would, you want to go to homes.com and make sure your picture is is up to date and all your bio information is up to date right on that. So that's got to be part of the whole thing. But it depends on, what is successful. This is going to be, they're going to sell something to agents, right? So this is going to be, I think they already have this, everybody kind of, the agent community likes the messaging of you're listing your lead, right? So they've got that, but you add this, a sense of urgency with all the ad spend they're going to be doing. I think they're going to kill it out there, right?
Do you think they'll be 50% of Zillow by the end of the year?
Well,
25%,
again,
you know what I'm saying?
There's two metrics here, right? So, and I think this was also in the article. I mean, they make way more money than Zillow does now, right? Zillow is, what did they only had like 3 or 4 profitable quarters in the history of the company, right? So CoStar is a different kind of money making machine. So, traffic is one thing for sure. And he definitely wants to be number one from all the stuff that, you've talked about and I've read. But, I think it comes down to is this going to be a successful operation on the dollar side? And he's got to come up with a package he can sell agents for some amount of money that is going to make them open their credit card up and let them swipe it. But I mean, will homes.com overtake Zillow? I'm very skeptical about that. Right. I mean,
I don't think they'll overtake. I guess the question is, how much do they shrink the gap?
Right.
Between them. In fact, you know what? What's the latest?
I mean, while you're looking at that, I mean, to me, it's like, it is funny because, it was Dan Levy and Heidi, I forget her last name, but she was on SNL. And the funny thing is if everybody will remember in the real estate, because we all shared it, was a Zillow skit they did on Saturday Night Live. Those two were in that actual skit. So it's kind of very, very smart of them to pick those. Actually, smart. I think one of them wrote it or was a writer in that. So they're really smart in what they're kind of doing there. So that's going to be kind of funny.
Right. So according to this story from Real Estate News, let's see. They're claiming that traffic more than doubled between August and September. So it's a little bit older. It's from last year. Going from 39 million uniques in July to 46 million uniques in August, and then over 100 million in September. But there's no way of
or some
nonsense, there's no way of really seeing that. So let's see. ComScore shared latest numbers of Real Estate News. August, Zillow received 109 million, Realtor 56, Redfin 37, Homes 33. So according to ComScore, at least it's whatever, right?
Yeah.
However,
it's a distant second, right?
Fourth, according to ComScore in August. Now that may have changed.
I think since August they overtook Realtor, right? I mean, that was a big announcement and controversy of some type.
Yeah. So they're number 2. I mean, it seems to be, generally speaking, Homes.com is number 2 now. Obviously, going to spend $1 billion and trying to overtake Zillow for number 1. It probably doesn't happen this year. Question is how much they close the gap.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, it's it's funny because I we're in organized real estate. The stuff we talk about is like,
Correct.
in our space, and it's like
Correct.
this kind of
Correct.
bubble. But now that some of the stuff now sometimes leaks out to the consumer, and like a little bit more than anything, so you got a little bit more like party talk,
Right.
dinner party talk to talk about now since you're in the biz a bit. So it's just it's kind of fun.
It would be interesting to so let me ask you something. Like, have you ever used a website or tried a product that you never heard about because you saw a Super Bowl ad about it?
Oh, I'm sure I have. I mean, I'm sure I've seen something and go, what the hell is that? And, kind of looked it up. I'm sure. Yeah.
You're sure you have? Because I don't think I ever have. So here's what I mean by that. Super Bowl ads, right? Typically, the typical advertising Super Bowl are your big consumer brands.
Ford.
They're already well known. And what they're doing is they're doing it to like strengthen their brand, right? So Doritos or Bud Light before, you know, the implosion, or, right? Yeah. It's the big beer brands. It's those guys. And I'm trying to think of like the brand new entrants. And the thing that I guess comes to my mind is like in 2021, I think crypto.com had a big Super Bowl ad.
Yeah. Like, right? Was it Matt Damon or something looking like
something like that, right? In other words, like
something
trying to get
the believers or to the, the
something.
The
frontiermen. I don't even remember it. Right. Yeah. But I honestly don't remember any, like as just a viewer, if I'm back when I used to watch Super Bowl, right? Seeing something, I never heard of this company before. I never tried this website, but now that I'm seeing it in the Super Bowl ad, let me go give it a shot. I don't actually remember that.
Yeah. I think
personally,
there's two audiences here, right? So, obviously there's the, audience of like the Super Bowl ad and the things they're doing, but like, I think you and I are from a generation, and I got to believe millennials and Gen Z still, the Super Bowl is a big fucking thing, right?
Sure.
So if I'm selling something, right, and that's what they're going to release the hounds on Monday, right? As far as the salespeople, that is something, that I can create. In sales, it's all about a sense of urgency. So for the agent side, right? Not talking about traffic, whatever else, that you could see what that does. But when I say to an agent, hey, yeah, we just did a Super Bowl ad, this, I mean, that is a powerful statement. If I'm a salesperson trying to sell them a membership to, or whatever they call it, to homes.com. Right. So there's a bigger impact, I think, on the narrative, other than like clicks and everything else. It's just, it's going to be helpful for a person on the phone or in an email or on a banner ad to kind of reflect the level of commitment they've got to put your name out there, or, a site with your name out there. So I think that's not, that's not a small thing. That's a big thing. But yeah, I mean, I can't, you're right. I think I have, but I can't really name one product that I went, oh, wow, I got to go see this. Right. I mean, you might get teary eyed at the Ford ad where the son and the daughter and the father are taking out the old thing, or the horses, the Clydesdale that the Budweiser stuff used to do. I remember all those kind of things, or the Mean Joe Green with the hey kid. I mean, there's some classic. There's Americana about that. There's a nostalgia about those kind of things. Everybody's talking about. Or as I said before,
the Men of Genius, right?
Yeah.
I mean, there's some great. Yeah. And that's kind of the thing. I feel like the whole point of the Super Bowl ad is you spend all this money on the creative, and what you want is this really super memorable, right? That becomes part of pop culture, right? Like the What's Up Frogs, or the, and the beer companies, quite frankly, have done the best job at it, I think, over the years.
Yeah.
But, if that's the goal, like...
Well, I mean, you want that water cooler effect, whatever the water cooler is nowadays. When you're talking to somebody, I was in Zillow, and like, oh, did you see that ad for homes.com? I mean, it's all little things. What do they say about advertising? 50% of advertising works, right? It's just which 50, you just don't know which 50% did.
Right. No, look, I'm not knocking it. I'll just make a couple of like small thoughts, like, hey, if you're a millennial, would you spend on Super Bowl ads, or would you just go, you know what, I'm going to dominate online. Right? I'm going to dominate the podcast.
Okay, let's pick apart
that's one, right?
Yeah.
And again, I don't know the answer to that. That's just a observation. And the second one is really like, is this really more of a branding play? So maybe the traffic to homes.com doesn't shoot up as a result of this. It's just more now all of a sudden, however many, 50, 100 million people are like aware, like I've heard of homes.com. Oh yeah, I saw their Super Bowl ad, right? This is not a fly-by-night operation. Like this is obviously a real company with enough money to go spend money on Super Bowl ads, sort of like that. Maybe that's the value, It'd be cool to get like a brand marketing person, to talk about this.
So two things. Let me go first to what you're talking about, the podcasting stuff. What do you think the demographic of a podcast listener is? I mean, let's just go sample things. Like, what do you think the gender is?
Split. It depends on the podcast. It really does. Like the ones that I watch.
Podcasts in general, I would say probably a 70% male thing. No? Would you disagree with that?
Like I said, I think it really depends on the podcast. It depends on so for example,
but maybe overall, like podcast listeners. I mean,
I think it's
my wife doesn't listen to podcasts.
Is she on Instagram? Does she watch any of the YouTube, TikTok videos?
I'm strictly talking about podcasting. That's what I'm talking about right now.
Even podcasting, I mean, Sunny's obsessed with it, right?
Okay.
But so here's the thing. It's like she's listening to podcasts that are more about like lifestyle, nutrition, fitness, that sort of thing.
But she's a podcast listener.
She is a podcast listener.
Yeah, would you say just overall it's more males listening to podcasts than females?
I would probably the big podcasts are probably slightly more male.
Right.
The big ones, like the Joe Rogan.
Joe Rogan.
Right.
You're not going to reach my wife, even I think Sunny with Joe Rogan, right? Yeah.
Well, they'll reach Sunny with Joe Rogan.
Okay.
Joe Rogan has a fairly sizable female audience, right? But what I'm saying is like, I think if you're doing more of an online approach, there are certainly online influencers and podcasts and people who are like catering to women. They're like, I believe there are Instagram people who are all about like makeup and fashion.
What do you think the age groups of podcasters or social media?
I think it's all 40 and below.
Yeah.
I think that's
probably market they're looking for.
Yeah. So people like me, people like Sunny, we're a little bit, I don't know, we're a bit of an outlier. I don't think a whole lot of 50-somethings are listening to podcasts, right? Or if we are, we're listening to very select ones that, like who the hell listens to our podcast?
We're bastards.
Hey, people.
Somebody did listen to. So for those of you that missed this, really quick meta story here. We had a little slight editing problem where the end of the podcast, we didn't stop recording, and people got a wince of like our banter after the recording. Yeah, and lucky for us, it was not anything bad, but we did edit it.
That's our standard banter after. It's not like we on a typical show we get off and they go,
Rob, I mean, sometimes
Lord Satan for that wonderful, like it's, we're not trying to hide the ball here.
No, but I mean, right? Listen, we've talked about some shit afterwards or before. Okay, another thing I want to bring up about homes.com. So I'm old enough to remember that really I wish I remember his name. The real original OG founders of homes.com. This is and what they were basically part of was the whole .bomb thing. Homes.com was part of the pets.com and that whole thing. It just imploded.
Yep.
And it was bought by Dominion Enterprise, and my company I was with, eNeighborhoods, was also bought. That's how I kind of have the first thing with them. But it's so interesting to me to see these kind of like this, like web van, right? That kind of shit. Mm-hmm. But like 25 years later, that homes.com has got this like new vibrant life and a Super Bowl ad, and like just knowing like the fucking just the travesty and the turmoil they had back in the 2000 2000s 2001 2002 and then kind of floundering or whatever. Now, I mean, who'd have thought? This is just such a crazy world, man.
Growth.
Yeah.
All right. I mean, I think that's going to be an interesting one. You know what? I'm real curious. Okay. How does Zillow respond?
Well, again, I mean, Andy's got all the goddamn money. They're not going to go, they can't trade punches, back and forth, because they just don't have that.
They're the war chest.
Yeah, they don't have a war chest. And then, if I'm homes.com, the Zestimate is really something so fucking genius that they came up with. But it does invite more of a looky-loo voyeuristic kind of visitor than probably a homes.com. So if homes.com never makes it there, and portals have been doing this forever. Well, we're the right traffic. This is the traffic you want, right? This is not, whatever else. But, again, as we've talked about in the podcast, Zillow is a cultural thing, right?
Yeah.
So, it's going to be a hard thing, but I mean, I'm sure Mr. Florence would be happy with, making, when he can show in his, like, on his quarterly calls that his division is selling more, is doing more revenue of selling to agents than Zillow is. That would be hilarious, right?
But because
that takes the traffic question out of the equation in a sense.
No, what I mean is for them to outdo Premier Agent, right? And like I said, we've talked about this in past, things, and I've written about this. What it means is that buyer agents' commissions completely get wiped out.
Right? Rob, what do I say, man? There are no coincidences.
Well, okay. Then what you're saying, I think, is that CoStar is behind this all, and I'm not conspiracy theory. And
I'm not saying that at all. I mean, all we have to do is look at the organized real estate murder board, buddy, right there.
He is obviously joking, so please don't sue us. Keep in mind, CoStar literally has head of litigation.
No,
okay,
no,
so
no,
don't poke that bear, man. But look,
there's different ways of being behind something, right? I mean, there's, I'm not going to touch the thing anymore. Let's just move on.
Yeah. So back to what I was asking is, okay, look, just because you don't have the money to throw at a Super Bowl, I don't think that's what Zillow does anyway. But they have to respond somehow.
Why do they have to respond?
What?
Why do they have to respond?
Because they have to try and maintain that lead, right? Let's put it this way. Strategically, if Homes.com ever becomes the number one portal, right, by traffic, or if that gets even close, right? Like, let's say the difference is like 10% or something. Not because, at 100 million, Zillow's at 300 million. So, it's still a third or whatever, right? Depending on whose numbers you use and blah, blah, blah. Okay. The banked up 10 plus years of Zatorade, right? And the Zillow derangement syndrome will get unleashed.
Oh, man.
Right? You and I both know this is going to happen.
Yeah,
right?
yeah. I didn't think about it that way.
Zillow has to respond in some fashion. I'm not saying they're going to do ads, but they have to do something. They can't just go, we'll ignore it and we'll just continue. Like, I don't think they can do that. Do you?
Man, no,
I don't think Rich will do that. Like, I don't think those guys at Zillow are the type to sit on their laurels and be like, oh, we're number one and we have nothing to fear. I just don't get that vibe from them. I think they're actually
they're ex-Microsofties, man. They don't roll like that.
We're number one today, but we better work our ass off to maintain that. So I think they're going to respond in some fashion. Question is how.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. That Zestimate is their ticket. I mean, it's so hard to, as far as traffic wise, right? You're just going to get another level of traffic. Although, one of the things that I again read in an article was, what did he say? I love this. It's like they've got a drone fleet of 400,000 drones at homes.com.
Sure.
It's like he says he thinks only the U.S. military has more drones than fucking CoStar.
That's
hilarious, man. That is hilarious.
Yeah, I would not discount that. That's a very serious operation.
So, I mean, it depends on they're talking about a ton of maybe the content. I haven't gone there, and I don't know if some of this stuff I've seen, but is there stuff that's going to be really only released right at the Super Bowl or something? So I have to kind of do a before and after thing. But
guess we'll
I don't
find
know
out.
how, because to me to compete on search experience and things like that, right? There's got to be something extra there, right? It's either motivation to go there because of marketing, or I don't know. We'll have to find out.
Right. It's got to be. I mean, it's got to be cheaper, but it's already free, so that's not going to play. It's got to be faster. easier in some way, right?
Yeah.
I mean, something. So we'll see. We'll see this Sunday.
Yeah.
I mean, I probably won't watch the game or anything, but I
You
might
gotta
tune in
watch
during
it. What else are you gonna
halftime
do?
just for I don't know. I gotta figure something out. I gotta figure something out. Or
Does
I'll just watch.
Does Sonny watch football at all?
We used to be like big time fans. I'm just saying we're no longer into sports ball of any kind. We're old. What do you want?
Oh, good Lord.
We do need to figure out how to get back to it. All right. In any event.
Well, you're invited to my place. If you want to make a drive down, we're going to have a nice little party. So. Okay.
It's a long fucking drive.
What do you think about
some interesting news? I think there was one other piece of news that you wanted to break.
Yeah, we didn't talk about this last time because we had a great guest and a good topic in regard to the FCC new ruling. And I'm starting to see that I saw something in that on Hacker News too. So it's starting to leak out to everybody. You can't do robocalls.
Yep.
Is the KW settlement, right?
Sure.
So it was it 70 million?
Yeah.
I think something like that.
Yeah.
And I think some can say, and maybe you say that about NAR and also BHHS. I mean, I don't know. I mean, let me ask your opinion. If they would have settled before the verdict, do you think they would have had a lesser payday or a lesser payday or a lesser payout
it's
or not?
Impossible
because
to say.
It was kind of smart then if you look at it like, let's wait to see what happens and then we'll settle, right? I mean, people could look at it that way, and maybe
they could, yeah.
NAR and BHHS we'll talk about them after this.
Yeah.
What do you think?
It's impossible to say, right?
Yeah.
I mean, who knows? If they had settled earlier, could they have gotten 35 million? It's impossible to say. I mean, Keller Williams is big enough, right? So just compare it to like Remax. You know what I mean? Remax was what, 55 million?
Yeah.
But the relative size is about that, right? I think Keller Williams does have more agents than Remax.
$70 million though, bro. Gee, Merry Christmas.
I mean, so I was like, I got all these like reporters reaching out, like, we want to talk about the KW settlement. I'm like, I don't think there's anything new for me to say on that, right? It's the identical settlement as the Remax and Anywhere settlements. So the big takeaway is going to be, and I put this on Twitter, is okay, so presumably Keller Williams brokers and agents are no longer required to be realtors, right, by the franchise. So now that's Anywhere in all of their franchise brands, Remax, Keller Williams. I mean, that's the top three, right?
Yeah.
In terms of franchise brands, I think BHHS is probably next.
Well, that's
so they do the same settlement.
Yeah,
right?
Well, but let's talk about that. They just recently announced that they think they want the Supreme Court to look at this. Right. So, but they're going on a different tact where they're basically saying that in all their agreements or all the agreements that go out, that there's a arbitration clause, and that this should have never been involved in a class action. I think the way the plaintiffs look at it was, well, these are agreements that are not with BHSS. These are individual agreements with the brokers. So they're playing. I mean, you got to try all angles, but this is not really going to the heart of the commissions and the cartel stuff. It's just a legal strategy, right?
Sure. Well, I look at it like literally every lawyer, every lawsuit, if you lose, you're probably going to think about appeal to Supreme Court.
Yeah, no, I was listening to
and
those
as long
guys
as the client is willing to pay your bills to draft that, you're probably going to file a request for cert, right? Certiorari, right? But so in a way, the thing about it is the fact that they asked for a Supreme Court review to me is not news. Like that headline should have been written as the law firms for BHHS make more money. The news would have been Supreme Court grants certiorari.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? If Supreme Court said, hey, you know what? We should actually rule on this, rule on this. That would have been news. The fact that you filed for one.
Well, this to me almost goes into the same line with, and you can help me with this, but there was some scuttlebutt or some argument to say, and I forget there's a Latin term, I'm sure, because it's always law, that and maybe it had to do with the case where you have to be the one harmed. And their argument was being made that, well, these guys were not directly involved with this, so who got harmed? Do you remember what that's called, or if that's a case?
I can't
You know what
remember.
I'm
It's
talking about,
yeah,
though.
yeah, yeah. Ed Zorn talked about it. There's a famous case, basically indirect purchasers, aren't
Yeah,
covered,
yeah,
kind of thing.
yeah.
Yeah,
And this kind of almost had a little bit of it hit differently, but about the same, right?
yeah.
Yeah,
The thing is, I don't know, man. Like the legal technicalities and whatever for lawyers and judges, and I get it. It's going to be super important and super interesting, and billions of dollars could swing one way or the other based on like the interpretation of this one little thing. Like, okay, I suppose, And when I look at it, like making arguments is one thing. Like we can analyze those arguments and discuss that from that standpoint, but the news is when the court actually rules,
right.
right?
Well, isn't that something we're going to see next week? Also, I think
Potentially,
Novalik,
yeah. No
Novik,
select the MLS
no
pin
select.
case. Yeah,
Yeah,
we
where
may
the
get the
DOJ
Department
is
of
supposed
Justice
to
right.
get. Yeah. Okay. Well,
Supposed to say, here's what we want. Right.
at least Rob. Hopefully they do that, so we know exactly what we're talking about next week, right?
Correct. So that would be news, right?
Yeah.
When the Department of Justice finally shows their hand, right? Here's what we want. Like that to me would be more newsworthy, and then we'll be all over that, hopefully.
Yeah.
Right. But like the KW settlement, look, the only thing that makes me think about is, all right, if you take all the Anywhere brands and all the, Coldwell Banker brokerages the company owns, right? You take Keller Williams, you take Remax. What percentage of realtors is that?
Shit ton.
Is it 30%, 40%, right?
Big chunk.
I mean, it's
for
a
sure.
lot, right? Let's say it's 30 or 40%. Okay, now 30 to 40% of the quote realtor membership no longer are required to be realtors by the franchise.
Mm-hmm.
And then I feel like I'm going to be having steak dinner at your expense next March. Is what this all boils down to. And Inman's whatever, like the NAR lost 65,000 members since October or whatever. I'm like, but that's seasonal. Do you know what I mean? Like you always see that sort of thing. It's not that big a deal. And NAR came out and said something like that. I'm like, yeah, but that's because all these people have re-upped for this year. If
Right.
if BHHS does the same settlement, okay, now what percentage are we up to, right? And there's gonna come a point, dude. Like this is the thing that I think about is, let me ask you this: do the franchisees, especially in markets where they don't have to be realtors to gain access to the MLS, so Thompson states, right, and California, do you think they would go to an agent or recruiter and say, "Hey, listen, if you join us, you can save $1,400 a year on those realtor deals"?
Yeah. I don't know.
Do you think brokers would use that as a recruiting thing?
I don't think so.
You don't think so?
No.
Okay.
I mean, a lot of times in those times, a lot of states, it's you get to join the MLS cheaper if you're part of the association in a sense. They do some sort of financial wrangling where it's like,
of course,
okay, why am I fighting this? And there's going to be some sort of community.
Of course.
Hopefully we'll start saying, NAR, doing more messaging about what it is. But I don't. I mean, I think it's just we don't care, you can join or not, and maybe that moves a needle on some time.
Well, here's what I know. What I do know is that if you look at some of the surveys and studies, like the one that 1000 Watt did, right? A big chunk, like 30 to 40% of response said, well, I joined NAR because my broker told me I had to.
Yeah.
So if that goes away, I don't know. So my point about the KW thing is like, look, it's the same as the Remax and Anywhere, lawsuits. KW is going to change their training, right? And obviously their training materials was like piece of evidence for the plaintiff. So that's all going to go away going forward. So that's good. I'm sure there'll be all sorts of whatever new things they're going to have to figure out. But it doesn't change anything fundamentally, right? Because KW, just like Remax and Anywhere, they don't control the rules. They just control their own people. So the only significant thing to come out of it is the fact that they're no longer going to require that you be a realtor.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that that's curious to me is like, what does this actually cover? Right? Because it's a nationwide settlement, and they're trying to. I guess when I read the article, that they're trying to say that this is going to roll up into all the stuff. So they're just trying to eliminate everything else. I mean, is that possible?
Yeah, I mean, as far as I can tell, based on what the judge's approval, the preliminary approval, I mean, anywhere Remax and now Keller Williams should be immune from any commission lawsuit. At least now, the wrinkle is they're immune from any seller filed commission lawsuit. Right. So there is a suggestion that they may still be open to the buy side filed, the Battens.
Right.
Thing about that though, for me is, I don't know. Like again, this is where like I've never been.
There's no blood in that stone. I mean, there's no juice in that grape anymore, right? I mean, once you.
Not only that, what I'm saying is we're talking about the same thing here, right? Like, so let's put it differently. Let's say I'm a broker. I get sued by, I'm in Sitzer, and it's not even a settlement. Let's say I pay my damages, right? Hey, because of this, whatever.
Yeah.
$10 million. I write a check for $10 million, right? And then the buyers come and sue me and say, you owe me money. I'm like, wait a minute. This is the same crime, right? This is the same act, right? So
is there a double jeopardy thing?
It's a double jeopardy situation, right? So I think Batten, if you look at the companies that Batten sued, they were all companies that were not named in Sitzer, right? They were like brokerages, not franchises, right? So I think at least Catchmark seems to be aware of that. You can't get two bites of the apple, man. You got to kind of have to pick, right?
Right.
Is it going to be, sell side or it's going to be buy side? Again, there are some lawyers who are like, well, the buy side case is stronger because that's a direct purchaser and go back to that, indirect purchaser rule thing, blah, blah, blah. I kind of feel like the courts are likely to sort of see past that, right? And be like, look, what we're talking about is the payment of commission, the sharing of that commission, and this system that allegedly blah, 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 right? Okay. Whether it's by the buy side or the sell side, it actually doesn't matter, right? The whole idea is that somebody paid too much in commissions, right? So we're going to stop that. We're going to award damages and then go forward. I think that's probably how it's going to be done. But maybe not. Like I said, I could be dead wrong. And some judge somewhere is like, well, the indirect purchaser thing. So we're going to have to say no and, reverse this. Like that could happen. I mean, I'm not saying it won't happen. But to me, it's like the news is when it happens. Right.
I mean, just, I know this is causing just nothing but strife in the industry with, these lawsuits popping up and of course MLSs and associations having to deal with it and brokers. I mean, of course. And now, it all trickles down to the vendors where, they're trying to get some deals done, but everybody's like in this stasis, right? I mean, who has the time? And oh God, it's horrible. The quicker we can get out of this is the better.
Yeah. And so there's, all sorts of people talking national settlements and blah, blah, blah. Like, I would love to kind of explore that a little bit further, except that I don't know that you and I are necessarily like the best people to do that. Right.
Oh, so we can talk about anything we want. Let's.
You know what I mean? It's in terms of like, are we going to add any value to that? Right. That's what I mean.
No.
No. So,
maybe
the whole national.
Maybe a couple chuckles.
Well, no, here's the thing. So like the Ed Zorn, he only was on Inman stage and he laid out kind of the national whatever settlement scheme. He's like, this is what, I could see happening. I'm like, well, the key thing there is that this is what he wants to see happen. Right. What I would love to hear is, here's what the plaintiff's lawyers are willing to accept. Right. In other words,
we should be able to get, hopefully next week again, just, tagging back to that, because it does seem like these things are all tied to like the DOJ saying that's not enough. That's not enough. That's not enough.
Yeah.
If maybe we get some sort of actually clarity from DOJ next week,
maybe
there is a path from, okay, now that's what you want. Let's get around the table and talk about what that is. Right. So, I don't think we've really been clear about that at all.
We have not been clear about that. And so I'm like, okay, like at this point, we'll see, right? We'll see what happens. One thing I'm fairly confident of, because this was my prediction, and the predictions I made for it, the 7 predictions that I do every year, I feel like this last year, the one I made it for 2024, tended to be like, I actually try to be a little bit more accurate than I normally do. I normally try and predict ridiculous things because it's fun, but it makes people think. This one I think was going to be, so one of the things I talked about is there will be a consolidation of all these cases, right? Because we're up to, I think, 20 cases.
Yeah, I think that sounds low, but yeah.
And there's going to be a few hundred more, right? Unless there's some sort of and the federal courts have a way of doing this, right? Consolidating all of it into one place and say, okay, listen, we're going to handle all this in one judge, one court. So we're not wasting everybody's time, right? It's a multi-district litigation thing. That's likely going to happen, right? And then we'll see. But at this point, man, you look at the map, there's still lots of states, lots of cities where no lawsuit has been filed.
Yeah, they're all just, and they're all walking on eggshells right now.
I don't think they should be walking on eggshells. I mean, so here's something that I think is interesting. I did hear a friend of mine, who actually I think it was you, right?
Well,
talking about MLS boards and how they're talking because they want to get sued.
So I mean, well, it's to me what and again, I talked to 3 MLS execs today, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and if you haven't had the privilege of being sued, let me just tell you, it's not a great situation, right?
Nope.
And one of the things that they do is they say, okay, well, from now on, don't destroy any documents or any emails or anything like that.
Right.
And that's what, I feel like a lot of these MLSs and associations and brokerages that are involved in like lawsuits, they've gotten those things. So they're a little bit gun shy about putting anything on a text, putting anything in an email or, anything written down. So now you have to go to the whisper net, right? I mean, you have to go to just talking directly with people, and it's hard to get people on the phone. And what that does is it causes friction. So when you're trying to make decisions with people, that's a friction when they don't want to, it can seem to you to be, or, it's just an email about that. They just don't want to put anything down, right?
I'm saying, I think that's just a mistake, right? If you're a brokerage leader, MLC association, here's the thing. I think you should assume you're going to get sued. Assume that your emails and texts will be discoverable. And then don't fucking engage in illegal shit on email and text.
Well, but how about that? We all know, there's illegal shit, but there's also just dumbasses or just things you're popping off on, right? So it's not, I'm not by any means saying that they're trying to hide illegal shit they're doing. It's just,
but as a general matter,
you can take any sentence and without context, twist it to any way you want. It's just ridiculous.
Of course, the process of punishment. So therefore, you should never go to trial. Just fucking settle. My point is, the level of friction, the level of fear and concern. I'm like, it's a little overblown, guys. You're gonna get sued, right? You're not going to go to trial on it anyway. You're gonna settle. Like, let's be honest about it. You're gonna settle. So maybe do your regular business, right? Just don't be so afraid of just sending a regular email to a potential vendor. Okay, yeah, I would love to talk more about whatever shit you got. Like the fact that, well, I'm not putting anything on email because it's discovered from court. This is the way the fucking mafia behaves. Like, let's not do that. Do you know what I'm saying? Let's just accept I'm going to get sued.
The M word. Here we are.
Right,
the M word.
I'm going to get sued, right?
Yeah.
And whether we did something wrong or not, right? This is not a criminal thing. I'm not going to jail for it. We're going to get sued. We're going to settle. So how about we just bank the money, do whatever we got to do over here for the settlement thing, and then let's continue with life. Because we still have to deliver products and services to our members. To me, that feels like a much healthier way of going about this. And I get you, man. Like, the process, the punishment. I've been saying that for 5 years. It's not whether you win or lose. It's the fact that you got sued and now you have to go through the depositions and the interrogatories and have lawyers all up in your face. Like, I get it. But maybe we'll just kind of like wrap up with that. I'm just asking.
Back to
maybe
business.
Talk to your attorneys, whatever. But how about you just accept it as a fait accompli? It's going to happen. We're going to prepare for it over here. Over here, we still have to do business. We still have to provide products and services. And you know what? I am going to email Greg back. I'm going to text some vendor. I'm still going to do business. And look, chances are those people weren't doing anything illegal or shady anyway.
No, not at all.
Email or text. And if you were doing something illegal or shady, or if you're making, your favorite topic, the Remind boys who got caught, like, maybe just don't do that. Right? Yeah. Whether there's a lawsuit on the horizon, right? Just don't do that anyway.
About buy and blow at the mortgage conference for your buddies, right?
Okay, you joke. Like, maybe don't put that in writing, whether there's a lawsuit or not. But then otherwise, conduct your business, live your goddamn life.
Yeah.
That's how I look at it.
Good advice. Good advice.
All right. Let's wrap there. And we will talk to you next week, hopefully.
Yep.
We'll have some news. We'll have some really interesting, meaty stuff to dig our teeth into. The Department of Justice unveils its hand. It might not be next week. It might be, who knows when, but we'll see.
Niners.
Go sports ball team. It's so, bunch of millionaires playing games and having a bunch of people cheering. Like, hey, great. Awesome.
Great one.
There, everybody.
Listen, content is everything. Two Brothers Creative makes it look easy. Right now, business owners really only have two options. The first option is hire a big firm. Now, this big firm's going to come in, make you think that they invented all the algorithms, and start charging you thousands of dollars every month. You don't want to do that. Second option is to do it yourself. Well, that means you got to learn SEO, SEM, copywriting, marketing techniques on the web. You should be really focusing on your own product. But now there's a third option. It's called Content in a Box. Give Two Brothers Creative 30 minutes a week and they'll handle everything. Plus, they'll show you how to bring it in-house later on. They'll rebuild your marketing foundation and give you tools and techniques and a new marketing playbook that'll actually produce real results and help you grow your business. Two Brothers Creative will give you the confidence and know-how to tell the SEOs and SEMs and all those other acronyms to get fucked. You're in control now. Get started today at thecontentbox.com.